Good morning and welcome to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. I'm your host, Doug Ponder, and I'm joining you live here at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC Studios in Renfro Valley, Kentucky. Well, we've all heard the news about everything going on with the Ebola outbreak in our country. And I don't know about you, but for me, all this Ebola news is hard to keep up with in the news. Now, some experts are saying that, we shouldn't worry about this, that it's not an airborne disease and yada, yada, yada. But then other experts are saying, hey, this is serious. We need to prepare for a possible outbreak here. And they say Ebola could possibly spread if we don't do something about it. Now, a lot of people in our country are worried, and, rightfully so. Now, some people are even preparing for the possible Ebola outbreak by remodeling their Cold War bomb shelters into Ebola bomb shelters. Now, even though they didn't get to use their bomb shelters during the Cold War, they might get the chance to use them during this Ebola outbreak. It's funny how life works out sometimes, isn't it? But you know what's scary and just flat out weird about all this Ebola nonsense? They say one of the main symptoms of Ebola is excessive bleeding from the eyes, ears, nose, and, other worse places on your body. But with that being said, all I can say is thank goodness Ebola is not in Kentucky, and hopefully it won't ever will be. But a lot of people in Kentucky have recently said their eyes and ears have been bleeding a lot here lately. Now, doctors are saying, hey, folks, don't worry, don't get all worked up about this. They're saying it's not a symptom of Ebola, but that's a symptom of watching and hearing too many campaign ads from Mitch McConnell and Allison Grimes. Now, doctors are saying Kentuckians, just tough it out until the election is over, and they're telling everyone that the excessive bleeding from their ears and eyes will quit after the election. So just hang in there, folks, and apply pressure to your ears and eyes until November the 4th, and you'll make it through this. Now, with that health update, I have to admit something. I'm still heartbroken about the Bengals' recent blundering loss in the NFL last Sunday. It's safe to say it's a crazy time to be a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Well, it's always been considered crazy to be a Bengals fan, but that's beside the point. I'm a die-hard Bengals fan, and I have been all my life. But last Sunday's game almost killed me when the Bengals finished their game against the Carolina Panthers with a tie. A tie. That means the Bengals are now 3-1 on the season, whatever that means. That's 3 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. A stupid tie. I mean, talk about a buzzkill after starting the season off with a 3-0 record. Now, Bengals starting quarterback Andy Dalton summed up the tied game to reporters in one word, describing it as weird. But he went on to say that the game didn't make him feel any different because his whole experience playing for the Bengals has been weird anyway. Now, it was rumored that he was going to award... but now listen to this. I'm going to jump in here. It was actually rumored that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell was going to step in and make a ruling over the Bengals-Panthers game that has caused a big dilemma last Sunday. Now, it was rumored that he was going to award the win to the team with the fewest player arrests. Of course, if that would have happened, I'm almost certain the Bengals would have immediately declined and just settled with their tie. The Bengals have had 42 players arrested since 2000. I mean, wow. That's an average of 3 players a year, and I think it's safe to say you won't be seeing the Bengals spearheading a crime doesn't pay campaign to keep youngsters out of trouble when they can't even stay out of trouble themselves. Now, I can speak for all Bengals fans in saying that we just want all the players to stay out of jail so we can have a winning season and make a deep run in the playoffs. I mean, is that too much to ask? Also, have you heard what has been going on in northern Kentucky recently? Earlier this week, Burlington Elementary School in Boone County announced that food was no longer allowed to be served at student birthday parties during school hours. The rule is a part of the new school policy that states no food, including birthday cake and ice cream, are allowed during classroom birthday parties. Now, the school's personnel and PTA say that they are doing this to fight obesity. But I think there's a hidden truth to all this. And I think that hidden truth is teachers wanted this policy so the students wouldn't be all hyped up on a sugar rush after the school birthday party. Now, parents and students at the school are upset about this, and they're just going wild up there. But the school's personnel and the PTA are asking them just, simmer down, calm down, and quit getting all worked up about this new policy. They say everything is fine, that students can still celebrate their birthdays at school and everything's going to be all right. They can celebrate with non-food items like pencils, erasers, books, and, other awesome cool stuff like that. Because, nothing says happy birthday more than a brand spanking new number 2 pencil. Yeah, buddy. But I don't think the school's prohibition of cake will work. And I can see it now. Clever students with criminal minds will be smuggling hundreds of boxes of Little Debbie's to school in their backpacks, lunch boxes, coats, or whatever else they can fit them in, so they can in turn sell them for 2 or 3 times the price to other students who are needing to satisfy that cake craving. Now, these students will be like little kitty Al Capones. They'll be fighting over which one of them controls the sale of Little Debbie cakes in each classroom. They'll be having turf battles during recess, in which will lead to smaller kids getting beat up on the playground and having their Little Debbie territory taken away from them. I mean, how sad. So these people need to think twice about what they have done with their new policy at this school up there. In all reality, the consumption of cake will increase in students, and kitty violence will also increase, with the turf battles between the little kitty Al Capones. Now, you'll end up having more problems than you did when cake was actually legal in school. But now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for wellness, dieting, and nutrition. I just think it has to be handled the right way. I mean, what do you think would happen if the government was to step in and prohibit cake from being made or sold in our country? It would definitely cause a second civil war, no doubt. But like I said, I know healthy lifestyles are important. And I know that if we don't do certain things in our lives, we won't live a long and healthy life, and we will die young or have painful complications or sicknesses to deal with in the future. That's harsh, but that's the truth. So thankfully, we have specialized people throughout the country who encourage us, educate us, and help us in these departments. And this morning, we'll be talking to some of these very people. Now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will talk with 2 great experts who will educate us about wellness, dieting, and nutrition. So stay tuned and don't go away. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studios here at Renfro Valley. Now, our first guest is a graduate from Georgetown College, and she is the wellness coordinator at Rockcastle Regional Hospital here in Mount Vernon. Morgan Kinser, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much, Doug. Let me just start by saying, ladies and gentlemen, Little Debbie is not your friend.
No, she's not. But you can't just get away. You can't just do away with her. It's just like that temptation. You got to educate, not force it away, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I'm educating Little
That's
Debbie
right.
is not your friend.
She's evil. Always has been evil. Well, all right, so to start off here, now wellness. What exactly is that? And, what's the textbook definition of that? And, does it include more than just exercising and fitness?
Well, you want textbook, so let's see. State of being healthy, just overall health. That's about the best I can do as far as a textbook definition.
Yeah.
Now, what all comes with being healthy? There's 7 different approaches that I use at work to make sure that someone's healthy. And so those listed are social wellness, which is just exactly as you would think, talking, being healthy, healthy relationships, good conversations, getting along with your coworkers, emotional wellness. And that's where we, the good things like stress-free, happiness, love, things like that all fall into emotional wellness.
Yeah.
Spiritual wellness, which is something super important, having something to rely on as far as your spirituality.
Whatever it may be for
Whatever
them.
it may be, that's right. And Jesus is wonderful.
That's right. Yep.
And then environmental wellness, go green. Are you recycling? That's a part of wellness. Occupational wellness, job satisfaction. Are you happy with your coworkers? Are you happy with your job? Intellectual wellness, can you have meaningful conversations with people? And then also physical wellness is where we spend a lot of our time thinking about exercise, nutrition, and the main meat of wellness.
Okay.
So think holistic. Usually the word's spelled Holistic, but I like to think of it as holistic, Wholistic.
Okay.
Holistic health, having that total health. Yes.
That's right. And you mentioned something great there. And I'm going to throw this plug in for you all because I think you all at Rockcastle Regional have done a great job at this.
Thank you.
And I'm going to say, because a big misconception is that when people think wellness, they think just fitness.
Right.
And now back in the day when we were kids, used to, if you saw somebody running out on the street, they were only running for 1 or 2 reasons. Somebody was chasing them or they stole something. But now that's not the case. I mean, people are running everywhere. You see it all the time.
Our
you know?
countywide stride has been wildly successful. We've got people from all over the country now attending these races. So we're so excited to bring wellness to Rockcastle County that was otherwise thought of as not a healthy community. So
yeah, and you all done excellent at that.
Thanks.
Now, does different type of wellnesses, you know, do they feed off each other or kind of like overlap? Do they all work together in some way?
Absolutely. Going back to the holistic approach, think you go to the grocery store to buy groceries, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you eat groceries? No, you eat milk, yogurt.
You
saying all these
caught
healthy
me for a
things.
minute. I had to think about that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you go to the grocery store to get groceries, but you don't eat groceries. As well as wellness is concerned, you practice wellness, but you don't do wellness. You do those things that I mentioned before, the social, emotional, spiritual, environmental, occupational, physical, and intellectual components.
Okay.
So put it all together, and what do you got? Wellness.
Okay. So now, is wellness different for everyone, you know, based on their gender or their age or whatever it may be? I mean, does our actual wellness in our lives change as we grow older or have different experiences in our lives?
Absolutely. If you come and see me and you are a 25-year-old lady, I'm not going to send you to go get a PSA check.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you to get your prostate stimulating
So
hormone
25-year-old
check.
ladies,
Exactly.
you're in the clear.
That's right. Just like I'm not going to send a man for a mammogram.
Yeah.
Wellness is different based on what phase of your life you're in, what's important to you, and things like that.
Okay. Well, good. So, as wellness coordinator, what do you suggest for people who may come to you that are trying? They know that their lifestyles are bad, or maybe that they're not achieving this wellness, and they're wanting help, but they don't exactly know what to do.
I just like to prioritize things for people and let them make that decision. You think like a motivational interview. Doug, what's important to you? If losing weight is important to you, then let's focus on that. But if maybe going to the gym is important to you, or learning how to grocery shop is important to you, then we'll address those sorts of things. So certainly case by case.
Okay. And now you all have a lot, and this is across the country. I know, and like I was mentioning, back in the day, it's like exercise was important, but it wasn't as, like I say, if you saw somebody run, it was from some other reason. But, now there's all kinds of programs, whether it be Zumba, I don't know what all that, there's all kinds of stuff now, and there's all kinds of programs wanting to help people, and it seems like it's been this big revolution that's evolved across the country. So what's available to help people, achieve this wellness and programs or whatever it may be?
People get it. People and insurance companies, I have to put that in there. They understand that well care is way more affordable than your sick care. And because of this, we know we can get a lot more accomplished by being proactive about maintaining your cholesterol instead of getting to the point where your cholesterol is so high and out of control your physician has to medicate you and then monitor that medication level. But in reality, a gym membership is going to put you out here at Rockcastle Regional Hospital about $10 a month. And you think if you're spending $120 a month versus what your cholesterol medication and your doctor's appointment and things like that add up to, wellness makes sense, and it's just a more affordable and very practical, very accessible way to remain healthy. Get and remain healthy.
I think you hit that point there, because it seems like a lot of people, they only want to do something when it's happened. They only want to change something when they have bad cholesterol, and they go to the doctor and they say, hey, you're going to die if you don't change this. Same thing with spiritual. People only want to do something when something bad happens to them, but it's something that needs to be maintained all the time. I think you hit that there. So, how do you get people to encourage you to do that?
Realistically, I like to start with baby steps.
Yeah.
Do you second guess brushing your teeth in the morning? Absolutely not. Just like starting an exercise plan. You want that to be just like brushing your teeth every morning.
Okay.
Something that you could do to start small. If you prepare your plate of food and you instantly reach for that salt shaker and start salting your food before you've ever tasted it, think about that. Take a bite first. Think about how much less salt that could be. That's not a hard thing to do. Very accessible. Yeah. And that's a great way to get started. That's
right. And it's just those small baby steps, and it's habits.
Absolutely.
Because they have that habit of putting salt on it, and they can develop a habit of not putting salt on it.
Exactly.
So it's just the same type of thing. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, and now when we come back, we're going to look at other things we can do to improve wellness in different kinds of areas. So don't go away. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. Now, we are in the studio with wellness expert Morgan Kinser. Now, we left off in talking about the different types of programs that people can do and different types of habits they can develop, those baby steps, to achieve the 7 different types of wellnesses that they want to achieve. Now, does everyone have to maintain or work toward a certain wellness? I mean, can people just exist, not have to worry about it? Or are there actually people like that out there?
What a sad way to live. That's kind of what I think. You could,
that's true.
guess. But, in some way, shape, or form, think about sitting down at dinner with your family. That's social wellness.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you're enjoying your time with your family, meaningful interactions. I believe that everyone in some way, they may not exactly call it wellness, but I believe they take part in it.
They do, yeah, and you mentioned the sitting down at the table. That's something that's totally gone. I don't know if technology's done that. It's like we've all evolved, and we're so busy we can't, stop until we're asleep or something.
Right.
And it's kind of went away. Now, is that something you focus on? Do you focus on each little thing like that, or?
Well, certainly, talking about preparing meals, that's something I work with a lot of our employees about. Getting back to cooking. There's worth in cooking way less sodium, and Lindsay's going to talk about nutrition further in detail after I'm finished. But as far as taking the time to prepare with your kids, prepare a meal, that's time you're spending with them. You're learning.
That's exactly right.
You're learning something with them, and it's just only benefiting.
Because you're hitting social, emotional, physical. You're hitting all those different wellnesses just by sitting down at the table and preparing a meal and stuff, aren't you? So
absolutely.
That's definitely important, and that's definitely something we need to focus more on, that people aren't seem to be focused. And it's something so easy. That's not hard. That's not like taking the ACT or anything. I mean, that's something people can do.
Absolutely.
And now, what do you suggest to people? And now this is another big factor that I can already hear a lot of people saying this right now, that are who are just depressed and don't have the willpower to want to change their lifestyles to achieve whatever kind of wellness they're wanting to achieve. I mean, because when people get depressed, they shut everything out.
Yes.
And those wellnesses, those 7 different types, probably kind of get left in the back burner. How do you encourage and motivate them?
Well, certainly that's a tricky situation, but going back to that, motivating the person to see what's important to them. If getting better is important to them, then let's find you the resources. We have Chelsea Larkey at the hospital, who's a wonderful resource. She's fantastic. She knows her stuff. And so finding opportunity, I like for people to understand that about 40 years ago, one of the most taboo words in the world was diet.
Yeah, it sure was.
And now think, we have Diet Coke. I'm on a diet. I'm on this diet. You hear diet all the time.
They'll drink a Diet Coke and eat a piece of cake, and it's all right. Yeah.
Yes, that's another day.
That's what they thought. Yeah.
But now, looking in today's time, mental health is certainly one of those words that people kind of shudder at. We talk about depression and things like that, but it's, to me, as someone who works at the hospital, I see that like a sore throat. I mean, it's something that needs to be addressed.
It sure is.
And there is no shame in that. So I believe that certainly we as a community can band together and understand that that is not something that people can control. And I don't want to get on a tangent about mental health, but certainly, get it taken care of. And there are resources here in the community for you. So.
And in a lot of ways, and these 7 different types of wellnesses can help maybe bring people out of depression in some ways.
Absolutely.
Everybody's different. There's exceptions to every depression or rule, but some people can get involved. They can have that social interaction through Zumba, and then they can help their physical being, and it can help them come out of depression, but everybody's different. And I understand that. I'm not saying that, everybody just needs to jump up and go to Zumba. There's a lot of people that have a lot of worse depression problems than that. I understand that. But, some people, that would help them, so everybody's different.
And our body craves exercise. And why is that? Not just for vanity purposes like weight loss. Your body wants to release those endorphins. And endorphins, what do? They make you feel good. They make you feel better. We have this misconception that when we begin an exercise program that we're going to be tired and we're going to be exhausted and we're not going to have time to do anything else that we like to do. But those of you that have joined in and started the exercise plan, that your body craves that. It wants that. It wants that energy. And in fact, you receive such an energy boost, you have more time and you feel better to do those other mundane tasks like folding your laundry, which is what I have to do when I get back home today.
I'm going to share a personal experience, and what you just described is what's kind of happened to me. Now, when I was in high school and college, going to the gym and working out was like a religion. I did it all the time, and obviously now I don't. Since I graduated college, it's just like that whole time factor, and you're all stressed, and and then you go home and you think you don't have no time, and you sit down watching TV for 2 hours. You don't have no time, but you think about everything. Of course you have time. You can always find time.
To watch television. And,
exactly. Yeah. So, and see, but I just think about that, and this is going to be our next question here. A lot of people I've talked to, and this is including myself, and I'm kind of wanting to get some advice from y'all as well. some people often think it's too late or it's too hard for me to try to change some type of bad lifestyle, whatever it may be, to improve whatever kind of wellness you're wanting to improve. I mean, is it ever too late?
Never, ever, ever too late. Hear me out when I say this. If you are a cardiac patient, say you have a heart attack, as soon as you are back home, do you know what one of the first things they're going to have you do is?
What's
sign up for cardiac rehab and get you on a treadmill.
Oh.
This is someone who has had open heart surgery, has had their chest cracked open,
Mm-hmm.
and those of you who have participated in that rehab program, you understand the benefit to your body. Same thing, we started Silver Sneakers about 3 years ago at the hospital.
Yes.
That is a program that seniors are able to go and socialize.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about a picture of wellness. Those seniors are able to interact with each other, get out of the house, exercise in a safe way.
Yeah.
We're seeing less falls. We're seeing less hospitalizations due to seniors actually participating in these programs. And it is never too late. I had a lady that was 92 when I was teaching the class. So there you go.
Yeah.
Never too late, ever.
Wow. Well, now that's amazing. And see, that's great. That's great.
And another thing, a lot of people talking about the fibromyalgia, arthritis,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, if you look down to it, doctors prescribe exercise. Now, we're not saying CrossFit, push-ups, doing burpees and things like that. It's gentle exercise. It's gently riding a bike. Exercise doesn't have to mean pouring sweat and feeling like you're all jacked up with muscles when you get finished. That doesn't have to be exercise, but movement, setting aside a time to increase your heart rate and make yourself feel better. Maybe you're sweating a little bit, but certainly for those that are older, the most important thing to do before you begin is always consult your physician. That's always step one. That's always going to be step one. You've got to make sure that there is no underlying cause. But then if you look back to what I just said, even a cardiac patient, they're going to be sent to exercise. But certainly get checked out by your physician first, just to make sure it's going to be safe for you to do.
And that's very important, because you can end up hurting yourself a lot more if you do something you're not, it's actually fit or whatever, achieving wellness, but it might hurt you more depending on your situation or something.
That's right.
So, okay. Now, and coming back to this, I know we kind of talked about this, and I'm kind of trying to hit home with this because a lot of people think this way. People's wake-up call is usually when they have that heart attack, or usually when they have whatever type of, sickness or problem. And until then, they might feel fine. Until then, they're like, well, why do I even need to exercise? Or why do I even need to, eat this? Or I'm trying to think of some other wellness examples. But, but then it happens, and then it's like a wake-up call. And like you said, it's never too late. But now what kind of preventative things can people do, before they get up to that? See what I'm saying? It's this, how can we make people that, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here, that keep them from getting to that point to where they have that sudden life change moment that's drastic? How can we help prevent people from getting to that?
Start by evaluating your life. What things do you do? I love to use the example of smoking. Are you a smoker?
Yeah.
Okay, so you spend, let's say you are, and you're spending $5 a day on a pack of cigarettes, and that goes for a week. So you're up to $35. Do it in a month. What are we at? I don't know exactly for the month. I'm trying to think. Oh, Mother, do not check my math right now.
And your mom be upset with me too. I'm not even going to comment. I don't even know.
But I do know that when it's all said and done, the average smoker who smokes about a pack a day is going to spend about $1,800 a year on cigarettes.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, now in my mind, with my wellness math mind, for every pack of cigarettes you smoke, I'm putting $35 in healthcare spending. Now let's talk about that for just a minute, because this goes into the preventative. How do I get started? Like you mentioned. If you're spending $35 on a pack of cigarettes in healthcare spending, that's not a lot in your first 10 years of smoking, right? And let's talk about that. For someone who's smoked for 10 years, do they have much trouble? No. They don't really get winded.
No,
they don't
that's
really
true.
have a cough. But you get up to that 20, 30, 40-year range, as far as healthcare spending is concerned, you're getting up to that $500,000 range in healthcare spending. But people say, no, Morgan, I'm not writing a $500,000 check to a hospital. But think about it. Because of your smoking over the last 40 years, have you had that heart attack? Have you had to be flown out? Have you had to have surgery?
Yeah.
Have you had to stay over in a hospital? What about your home health? What about your medication? What about your follow-up visits? Do you see how quickly that $500,000 quickly adds up? Only if you would lay down those cigarettes and save yourself a world of expenses and, poor health. So going back to your question, how to get started. Insurance companies have really picked up on wellness. You see television commercials that say, we include a wellness plan. People know that preventative health is much more affordable than sick care.
Exactly.
Your screening colonoscopy is generally covered by your insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let it go too long because of a poor diet, what happens?
Yeah.
Colorectal cancer incidence is really high in this part of the state, so we want to make sure that people are doing everything that they can to prevent. So
Exactly.
Does that answer your question
Yeah,
in
it does.
a roundabout way?
And because, see, people, I think people, and I'm guilty of this myself, if we're feeling fine, we think nothing's wrong. When in all reality, if we're not going to change what we're doing, we can have a lot of problems later on.
That's right. And that's something that I encourage my employees. If you feel fine, that is wonderful. Go see your physician anyway, because your doctor, knowing you as a well person, how much easier is it going to be for them to treat you as a sick person?
Exactly.
Give them a standard to know you by. Give them something to know that, hey, Doug Ponder looks like this and he is in tip-top shape. And that way, heaven forbid, if something does happen, then they have something to compare you to.
Exactly. Okay. Now, we're going to kind of wrap things up here. Now, what is your final suggestion for people who are, at this point, not working toward an overall wellness in their lives, whether that be spiritual, social, whatever it may be? What's your final suggestions for these people?
Final suggestion would have to be, take an inventory of your life, what's important to you. If getting healthy is important to you, then know your insurance plan. Know what benefits you're already paying for out of that monthly plan. See what you can get for free. See if you can get a lipid panel that's going to check your cholesterol and your triglycerides and things like that, your glucose. That way you know what you're working with. As far as moving forward from that, make an appointment with a physician at the hospital. Then get in touch with one of the dietitians. We have resources here within the community that you do not have to travel to Lexington for anymore.
Great.
We are providing excellent health care at the hospital, and it's such a joy to be a part of that because we are comprehensive. We are taking care of the whole body now at Rockcastle Regional, and I love that so much.
Good.
Yes.
Good deal. Well, that sounds good. Well, I think we're about out of time for this segment, and we're going to take another quick break. Now, when we come back, we'll be looking at the other side of wellness, which is dieting and nutrition, which goes hand in hand with wellness. So, Morgan, thanks for coming in, and I know you've definitely informed a lot of people.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug.
Hey, thank you. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. Now, we're at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studios here in Renfro Valley. Now, our next guest is a registered dietitian at Rockcastle Regional Hospital. Lindsay Gabbard, thanks for coming in and welcome to the show.
Doug, thanks for having me.
All right, Lindsay, we're going to Morgan out there. We're going to start things off. Now, what is the textbook definition of diet, and what is the textbook definition of nutrition? I mean, we hear those two words used interchangeably a lot by people. Are they the same thing, or are they different?
Well, they're different. Diet, comes from the Latin meaning dieta. It means daily food allowance, and in Greek it can be transcribed as just a way of living.
Okay.
But in this day and age, we often define diet as just the food and drink that we consume. Nutrition, on the other hand, is the process of eating the right kinds of food so you can grow properly and be healthy.
Okay. Well, good. So it is definitely important for people to diet and be nutritious.
Right. And just to clarify that diet is, not something that it's just simply the food that we're ingesting without regard to the nutrition value it provides.
Okay, I see. Okay. So now, and this is another misconception people have. Many people believe that those who only need to lose weight need to diet. Now is that actually true, or do people diet for different reasons? And if so, what are they?
Well, some people have, chronic diseases such as diabetes and heart disease that require them to be more consistent in consuming, like carbohydrates, for instance, with people who have diabetes. Heart disease, we target fat, limiting our saturated fat and cholesterol.
Yeah.
But with all of these, weight is important, managing your weight and keeping that at a healthy weight, which can prevent those chronic diseases. So,
exactly.
A lot of people have the misconception of diet being having those negative connotations. So,
yeah.
And I like to remind people to think about that Greek term, as a way of living, and not get so hung up on the word diet.
Yeah,
because of the restrictions associated with it.
It's like a bad word, you know. Yeah, and people just, and like I said, people diet and they have that way of life, for whatever reasons that make, people that are healthy as can be are still dieting, and people kind of get that confused sometimes too. So now, and this is another thing that I kind of led into here. So does everyone have to diet and eat nutritious? This is always a big misconception. I mean, you hear a lot about people that they can eat whatever they want and never gain weight, or they never get sick even. I mean, is dieting and eating nutritious only for a certain group of people, or is it for something that should be followed by everyone?
Well, we all need food, of course, to live. And if you want to live and have the good quality of life later, it's important to eat nutritious. Everyone needs to, be aware of the foods that they're putting in their bodies, because that's important. That food is providing specific nutrients that your body requires, and it's been shown, that a healthy, balanced diet prevents those chronic diseases. The leading causes of death, heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, those can all be controlled by diet and exercise.
Exactly. And people, and like we were mentioning with Morgan, people don't realize that until something bad happens to them. But there's a lot of diseases out there that's just horrible, painful stuff people have to go through that in all reality back in their younger life they could have changed if they had done certain things. And it's hard to get people to realize that if they haven't experienced it yet. That's the biggest problem to try to do for people. And
with the prevalence of childhood obesity, we got a great program at the hospital. It's called a Go Healthy program, and Mark McFerrin, the artist who's local, he developed the artistic work in this. And it's all about choosing the right foods, and it's making it fun for the kids. We go to the schools to educate and just express the importance of starting at the young age and eating healthy, because if you don't, you're going to be faced with those diseases later in life.
You are, and it can be really bad, It sure can. And I think it's great because it starts young, and for us, we can, older people, they can change their lifestyles, but these young children, it's so important to get it in them and get it instilled in their thinking and way of life when they're young, because that's so important. And so is each person's body different, and should people follow different diets based on their gender or their weight or age, blood types, genetics, whatever it may be? Is there different diets for each one of those?
Well, our bodies are different. Our genetic makeup is different. We still all need, the 5 basic food groups. The calorie needs will be different. Your protein needs will be different. A teenager will need more calories than an adult. If we're more active, or if we're, we compete, in marathons, or if we're bodybuilders, of course our needs change. So, but in general, the healthy, an adult would just, it's just important to ensure that you're getting the 5 basic food groups, and you're not eliminating those, because each of those food groups provide, different nutrients that our bodies
something
need.
that you need.
But there's so many diets out there. There was the blood type diet.
I saw that. I saw a book on that, different blood types.
I think people become a little desperate, when you're faced with this weight to lose, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Eating should be enjoyable. And not so complicated. It's just and the good guide, that we have available to us comes from ChooseMyPlate.gov. It's a government site that helps consumers to know what they need to put on their plates.
Well, that's good.
It's it involves portion control and a balance, of all those food groups.
Okay, well, see, I had no idea about that. As will be my next question for you, is where can people find out, where to find these certain things? And you touched on this too. It seems like our world, the business world, everybody wants something to sell. I mean, is there such thing as these phony diets these companies create to kind of try to not distract people, but just sell it? I mean, like you said, eating should be fun and enjoyable. It should all come back to just the basic things you were talking about, right?
It makes you wonder. I mean, a lot of people want the money in their pocket. Buy my book to get this. Learn how to eat.
Like the blood type book. Believe it or not, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I actually have one of those, or I think my family does. And I read it, and Try to figure out what my blood type was. I had to figure that out first too.
Yeah, it's too complicated. There's so many fad diets out there.
Yeah,
and they do not promote the long-term weight maintenance.
And that's true too. Yeah, that's true.
So
too.
it's not something that you can live with.
Okay. Now, at what point in people's lives should they see a professional to plan a diet? And do people need to? What point do people need to say, hey, or notice that their loved ones need to see a professional about their diet? Is there a certain BMI or weight limit or whatever? Or?
Well, get your regular checkups from your doctor. Know your numbers, know your weight and your BMI, know your cholesterol, your blood sugar. Get that checked on a regular basis. If those numbers are out of whack, talk to your doctor, see how she guides you, if medication is needed, or if you want to control it by diet first. Then let us, the dietitians at the hospital, can meet with the person individually, talk about what kind of changes that can be made to help achieve those goals. And if you're gaining weight, if you see that you're gaining weight or your loved one is gaining weight on 10 pounds a year or monthly, you don't want to get it so bad that you're gonna it's gonna be hard to lose.
To some point of no return or something. Yeah,
it's easy to gain, but it can be more difficult to lose. And listen, there's consuming an extra 100 calories a day can result in a 10-pound weight gain. In a year.
Oh, goodness.
So it can quickly add up.
Yeah.
100 calories, that's, 6 ounces of pop? So
yeah, and I used to joke, that was nothing. I wouldn't even worry about that. But that is so true. Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take another quick break here. Now, when we come back, we're going to take a look at what we can do once a diet is established and once you got your numbers, and tips on how you can stick with it and not break your diet or your nutrition plan. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. Now, we are in the studio with the registered dietitian, Lindsay Gabbard. Now, we were talking about the different diet plans and stuff. Now, once a dieting plan is established, what do you suggest for people who say they are too busy with their lives to cook all the time for themselves or their family, or they say that they end up eating fast food because the majority, they don't have time, they claim. I mean, is it possible to follow your diet by eating fast food?
That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Because there's so many options at the fast food restaurants. So tempting when we go through the drive-thru to just go ahead and get that fried chicken or double cheeseburger and fries. It's easy.
Yeah.
It is possible to continue to diet and with a busy lifestyle, but it will take planning, and that's important. If you can prepare ahead of time, think about your week, and plan some meals and snacks to keep on hand. When the kids get out of school, a lot of times, and they have those sporting activities.
Yeah, sure.
It's hard to resist going through the drive-through.
Yeah.
But if you can keep some snacks maybe in the car, and then go on home and prepare a meal to
that's right.
have with the family.
Yeah, and that's so important. Yeah. So, and then here's a big loaded question here, and it's a question for a lot of parents out here. Now, what do you suggest for parents who struggle in making their children eat nutritious? Some people even try to ground their parents if they don't eat, or ground their children if they don't eat nutritious. I mean, is there any tips that you can give for people that, work in certain situations for each child, or?
Well, parents need to remember that they're the boss and they're in charge. They're responsible for making sure that the child has healthy food available to eat.
Yeah.
Try to keep from bringing in those chips and cakes and those easy junk, foods that
really
junk.
Doesn't fill you up.
It's junk. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, of course, your kid's going to consume them. You know. Have those, make it fun, be a positive role model, keep the pop and the sugar sweetened beverages out of the house. You do need to kind of control what you have in the house and what your child is eating, Make sure that they're staying active. That's important. Keep them, limit their screen time to less than 2 hours a day. and get outside and play with them, you know.
Yes, yeah.
But keep those healthy snacks available, popcorn, you know, the apples and bananas, any kinds of fruits that are, you know, carrot sticks and celery, and you know, because the kids are going to be hungry, and snacks are an important part of, you know.
Something to hold them over until the meal.
Yes, yeah. So it's your job to keep the healthy foods available. You don't have to make them clean their plate, but you know, encourage them to try the new foods and at least take one bite. Serve milk with your meals, low-fat milk with your meals, and you know, keep the water between meals, and just decrease the sugary beverages.
Milk's important. I'm going to tell a quick story here. Now, my grandma, God bless her, she was I'd stay with her all the time, you know. And my mom she really tried to make me, you know, eat nutritious and eat. Now, my grandma would fix me anything, and all of us grandkids, whatever we wanted. If we wanted the biggest bucket full of greasy fries, I mean, she'd fix it for us. And that was, like I said, I love her, but I think that was a lot of my problem as I kept growing into an adult. You know, it's just, when I was a child, that's what we got, whatever we wanted. But to them, eating, see their grandchildren eat whatever they want, it made them happy.
Yeah, that's how she showed her love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, if I come wanting some big plate of greasy fries, that's how she showed her love. You know, and even though it may not have been good for me and stuff. So, and then, you know, my mom would get mad about it and all that stuff. You know, but so, and like you said, you just mentioned it. You know, you let them know that, you know, you're the boss, and over time, if you just keep, you know, feeding those different types of snacks, fruits and stuff like that, that's what they learn. That's all they learn is available anyway. You know, it's kind of like it's a habit forming thing. Yeah. So that's good too. Now, I hear a lot of people, we'll get into this real quick, try and talk about, they'll try to get their nutrition through vitamins, supplements, or whatever that may be. Now, is that a possible alternative for people that find it hard to follow a diet because of time or even moral reasons, you know, vegetarians and stuff like that? I mean, what suggestions do you have for people like that?
Now, are you talking about like vitamins and only drinking like the Ensure products, or only?
It's anything, because so many people's different in so many different ways. Can people actually take different types of vitamins to replace food? Is that actually?
Well, with some special diets, you and some people are deficient in nutrients. You know that supplements are required. You know, like iron or B12, or they're low on vitamin D, and they have to take the supplements. That can it's not, you know, that's necessary at times, but in order to get, you know, your nutrients and in a way that our body is going to absorb them well, you know, that has to come from real food. Real food.
I've always heard that too. Yeah. And you know, these other things they try to replace with, it works to a degree, but it's not, like you said, it's not like the real food, is it?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Well, now, where can people find some other information and resources, like online? That, you know, and I know you mentioned that government website about helping to plan meals. What's some other different types of websites that can help people?
Nutrition411.com is a great resource for us. They have all kinds of special diets, shopping tips, and meal planning. Planned meals, recipes. All kinds of information on food allergies, the gluten, celiac disease. There's eatright.com. That's another good site. American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association. Those all have really good references to balanced diet, balance of all those nutrients.
Yeah, that's right. And like I said, the Heart Association has probably good preventative diets for, you know, heart, you know, wellness and stuff like that, heart health and stuff too. Well, now what is your final suggestion here for people who are currently not dieting or eating nutritious for whatever reason that may be? Is their time actually numbered if they don't turn things around and change their lifestyles?
Well, you know, there's multiple factors that dictate longevity, so it's hard to quantify our days, but we know the leading causes of death are heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and cancer. And we know the role that diet plays in the development of these diseases. So it makes sense to make positive lifestyle changes to prevent these. You might consider how you want the quality of your life to be as you get older. Mickey Mantle, he said, if I knew I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself.
Ooh, yeah, good quote.
So don't wait until it's too late, you know.
Yep.
Don't wait until you're lying on the operating room table awaiting bypass surgery, or you've had a stroke, or you've already developed diabetes. You know, start by making small changes. You know, I know it can be overwhelming when you might think you have a lot of weight to lose, or you think about an ideal body weight, which is, you know, not accurate anymore anyway. But just take it small. Make those small changes, develop those into habits, and then take another step and work on some other area.
Yeah.
You might start with a goal of 0 sugar sweetened beverages, or make the switch to whole grains, or you may start with avoiding fried foods.
Yeah.
But, you know, finding support is necessary.
Big,
you know, it's
big
beneficial to have that support in place. You know, whether it be your spouse, your the dietitians at the hospital, we're there to help support you. But you know, try to remember to enjoy your food and mealtime. Make it a family affair.
Yeah.
And try not to set so many restrictions on yourself to never eat a cookie again.
Exactly.
You know, you're likely to fail, but instead allow it, and allow those times for those those types of foods. Yeah. But strive for balance and between your diet and activity. So energy in equals energy out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great way to put it. And I love the Mickey Mantle quote too. That is awesome. All right. Well, it looks like we are out of time, and I want to say once again, I want to thank both our guests, Morgan and you, Lindsay, for coming in and sharing the things with us that we all need to know to have great lifestyles and wellness and stuff like that. And I also want to thank you all for listening to The Pondering Show, and we will see you here next Saturday at 11 a.m. on WKUR-FM 94.9. And have a great weekend, and go Cats!